Hey guys, welcome back to Smoke Trails. My name is Steve Gow, and in this episode, we're gonna cook a Tomahawk ribeye on the Pit Boss 456D pellet smoker. Now this is gonna be a great video, and I'm super excited about it because this Tomahawk ribeye is looking real good. What is a Tomahawk ribeye? Well, a Tomahawk ribeye comes from the same cut as prime rib. But basically, instead of having a giant prime rib with multiple bones, you're just cutting one bone slice away from it, and then the butcher is Frenching away the meat that's on the side of the bone. So what it looks like is a hatchet or a tomahawk at the end of the day. It's got a ton of flavor because this cut of meat has a ton of marbling on the inside, a lot of intramuscular fat, and it's gonna be super delicious. This particular Tomahawk ribeye has been dry aged for 45 days, and we're gonna cook it using a method called the reverse-sear. So we're gonna start low and slow in the Pit Boss 456D at 225 degrees Fahrenheit, get a nice little bit of smoke flavor into this, and then we're gonna take it off the grill. We're gonna rest it for about 20 minutes until the cooking process stops and it stops rising in temperature. Then we're gonna open up the searing plate on the Pit Boss. We're gonna crank up the temperature to 450, and we're gonna sear this on both sides to get a nice Maillard reaction, nice crispy finish. Okay, first things first, in order to prep this Tomahawk ribeye, we wanna bring it out of the fridge and let it rest at room temperature for an hour. This is called tempering the meat, and when you temper it, it allows it to rest at room temperature and come up a little bit in temperature so that it doesn't have such a long temperature journey when you put it on the heat source. It's gonna cook more evenly, it's gonna cook faster. It's going to allow you to get that nice pink consistency throughout the meat instead of that bullseye sort of look that everyone gets when they sear a steak from start to finish and it looks brown on the outside and maybe a little bit more pink on the inside, and then there's that medium rare pink right in the bullseye in the middle. We don't want to do that. We want to bring this up to temperature gradually until it hits 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and then finish it with a quick sear after we rest it. But first things first, we always want to brine our meat. That's one of the fundamental principles of great barbecue. You want to put some salt on your meat, whether it's a wet brine or a dry brine. In this case, we're going to be using Weber KC Style rub. I'm just going to take off my glove here because I've been touching this meat with it. I don't want to get this all nasty. But I have this Weber KC barbecue rub from Weber Grills, and I've tried it before. Pretty good. It's got a lot of salt flavor in it, and it's gonna be really good for beef. So I'm gonna open this guy up. There we go. And you can see there's some thick granules of salt in there. It's got a lot of sugar content. It's probably got some paprika and chili powder. So this is gonna go really good with this Tomahawk ribeye. So I'm gonna start by just sprinkling it on. I don't want to get too much rub on it because I want the beef to kind of shine through. I want the heat and the smoke to get to the meat and not be blocked by a huge thick layer of spices like we might do on a brisket, for example. So rub that in a little bit. Just get a nice even layer on. Flip it over to the fat side. There's quite a bit of fat on here that I'm going to leave on. I mean, this isn't going to get much smoke flavor. It's not going to get much crust on it because it's fat. But it does protect the meat during the cooking process, and it allows it to cook a lot more evenly. So I'm just gonna treat it the same way that I'm doing all the other sides of the meat. Get it around the side there a little bit, flip it to the other side, and sprinkle that rub on. This rub looks really nice. There we go. That's gonna give it a nice color too, which is great for presentation points if you're going for that. There we go, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna let this temper at room temperature for about an hour, and during that process, it's going to work some dry brining magic into this meat. It's gonna suck in all of that salt, and it's going to improve the texture, flavor, and consistency of the meat, and also all of that extra sugar and pepper and paprika and chili powder in this KC rub is also going to mix in with the existing water and pull out some water, mix in with it, create a nice finish, and that's gonna taste really good. So we'll check back in an hour and see how it's looking. All right guys, so the first thing we're gonna do is start up our Pit Boss 456D. We're gonna set it to 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're gonna use some hickory wood pellets for this one. Get a little bit of hickory flavor in there. I don't wanna go too crazy with something like a fruit wood because beef is best with something simple like hickory or mesquite, in my opinion. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I'll fill this up. There we go, turned it on, set it to 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'll just wait for it to come up to temperature. In the meantime, I'll show you a little bit about my setup here. So I've got a grate on the cool side of the grill. The heat source is right here, but we're gonna be cooking the Tomahawk ribeye at 225 on the cold side so that we cook it low and slow and we don't get too much heat on one side and too much uneven cooking. So for that reason, I've left the grate off of this side so I know not to place the Tomahawk on that side when I put it on the grill. So we have the flame broiler cover covered right now, but when we finish this Tomahawk ribeye off at the end, after we've cooked it to 125 and rested it, then we'll open up this broiler and we'll flame broil it over high heat. So I'll just close that up for now, and I'll close this and we'll wait for it to come up to temperature. All right, we've come up to temperature. It's 225 degrees Fahrenheit on the Pit Boss. So now we're gonna put the Tomahawk ribeye on the grill. So let's open this up. And we're gonna put it on the cold side of the grill with the bone facing this way. Depending on how big of a Pit Boss smoker you have, it might be hard to fit this entire bone in. So I like to just put the bone over the hot side of the grill because we're not really worried about overcooking the bone too much. If you want and the bone starts getting a bit too blackened or browned, you can put some tin foil over it to protect it, but I usually don't do that until at least halfway through the cook. So now we're gonna close this up, but first we're gonna put our leave-in thermometer into the thickest part of the meat because we are cooking this up to 125 degrees internal temperature, not necessarily by time, but by temperature. So we're gonna leave this in until it hits 125 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, we're gonna take it out and we're gonna let it rest. All right, guys, this steak has been on the Pit Boss 456D for about 2 hours now, and it has come up to about 118 degrees Fahrenheit, according to my leave-in thermometer. I'm gonna open it up and baste it with a little bit of olive oil just to add some extra flavor, help with the searing process when we get to that stage. And it's also going to dry out the crust and just help you get a better bark formation. So I'm gonna open this up right now and see what we got. Nice, it's looking good. So there we go. As you can see, that's coming along nicely. It's got some nice bark formation. It's browning up real nice. Wow, that looks good. So first we'll just baste it with a little bit of olive oil. Flip it over. Get the other side. And now I'm just going to check the internal temperature, double check it with my Thermapen just to make sure that my leave-in thermometer is telling me the correct temperature. So we're reading about 119 degrees on the Thermapen, so that's pretty close. I think I'll be taking this off in about another 10 to 15 minutes once it hits that 125 degree Fahrenheit temperature, but this is coming along really nicely, so pretty happy with it so far. So we'll put this back and we'll turn it the other way just to cook it a bit more evenly. All right, guys, this Tomahawk ribeye has come off the Pit Boss 456D. It is reading 125 degrees internal. We're gonna let it rest at room temperature for about 20 minutes. And during that period, we're gonna come up probably another 5 to 7 degrees. And we're gonna hit the medium rare zone of 130 to 135 during that period. So why do we rest the ribeye? Why don't we just take it off the cold side of the grill, put it on the hot side and sear it right away so we can eat faster? Well, resting is a super important step in this process because we wanna stop the cooking process. If we take it right from 125 degrees and then sear it right away, that super high temperature is gonna skyrocket the temperature and you're gonna get an internal temperature that finishes probably in the realm of about 140 degrees plus because you're accelerating that cooking process. So we wanna take a step back, put it at room temperature, let the temperature rise to the natural temperature it wants to be, and then actually start coming down a little bit. And that's when we know that the cooking process has stopped. So this is gonna give it a bit of a buffer when we do the sear. It's not gonna skyrocket the temperature as much. And we're gonna get a nice sear and crust on the outside that everyone loves, but we're also gonna get that perfect 130 degrees, 135 degrees medium rare in the middle because the sear temperature isn't hot enough to reach that temperature that it's already set in the middle because we've let it rest for a while. So that's why we rest. Resting is a fundamental principle of great barbecue. You should do it with every single cut of meat that you have, and it's always gonna help you create a more tender cut, lock in more juices, and it's just gonna be better at the end of the day. So we're gonna leave this for 20 minutes and then we'll check back on it. We'll monitor the temperature, see how it's doing, and after 20 minutes, we'll put it back on the Pit Boss. Right now, I'm gonna go back out to the Pit Boss. I'm going to crank it up to 450 in preparation for the sear. So we want that grill screaming hot. And I'm going to open up the flame broiler plate and move a grate over top of it so that I'm all prepared and ready to do the sear. All right, we're ready to sear this tomahawk. So what I like to do is I like to open the flame broiler plate all the way open and set the temperature to 450 or 500 degrees. So really as hot as the pit boss can get. Place your tomahawk down on the grill and leave it there for 2 minutes. Don't touch it or move it during this time because we're trying to set up those sear marks. After 2 minutes, close the flame broiler using tongs or oven mitts. I do this because the direct flame can scorch your steak if you cook over it too long. So after 2 minutes, I close the flame broiler, rotate the steak 45 degrees, and let it sear for another 2 minutes. Then flip the steak over, repeat the same process on the other side. You should have some nice cross-hatched grill marks and a good crust. After that, it's time to take it inside and cut it up. All right guys, this ribeye is done. It just came off the pit boss and we did a quick sear on each side. So now it's time to cut into it, but first I want to do a quick recap of what we did. So we started off by letting this temper at room temperature for about an hour. We applied some Weber KC Style rub to it, just to add some salt and extra spices. We cooked it on the pit boss at 225, low and slow on the right-hand side, so the cold side, until we hit an internal temperature of 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Took it off, let it rest for 20 minutes until it came up to an internal temperature of 130. Just let it rest and suck in all those juices and retain that moisture. And then we did a quick sear at 450 degrees on the pit boss. And we did some adjustments with the searing plate to make sure that we got a nice crispy bark and got that Maillard reaction going. So now it is time to cut into this thing and I'm really excited because this looks good. Okay, let's start by cutting this off of the bone first. So we'll just take a sharp knife and we'll follow it just along the bone. Man, this looks good. And afterwards, someone can gnaw on that bone if they want. It's one of the best ribs they'll probably ever have in their life. Slice that off. There we go. So got that bone. Wow, that looks good. Okay, we'll put that to the side. And now we'll flip this over. And wow, that already looks great. So we'll cut into this. Here's the decal right here. This is called the decal for this particular cut of meat. That's probably the most flavorful part of this cut, so definitely serve that up to someone special or save it for yourself if that's what you want to do. But we're gonna cut right into the center of this, right across these grill marks here. So let's take a nice cut. And I'll show you in this camera what we got. Wow, look at that. Oh man, that looks delicious. Jeez, that looks good. Whew. Nice. We got a nice medium rare in the middle. Not too much gray on the outside, but we got a really nice bark on the outside, which is great. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to cut a slice off. Slice this one off. And I'll take a taste of this. That's good beef. Wow, this is really good. You can taste the hickory, you can taste the Weber KC rub. A lot of salt on the outside of it. That sugar, that's so good. Really recommend you guys try this out. This is a really nice cut of meat. Well, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I really appreciate it as always. If you want to hit that subscribe button, it would be much appreciated. Also consider hitting that bell icon so you can get notified of all my latest videos. All right, guys, happy smoking.